I was asked to conduct the speech in English, so if at any point you're uncomfortable or you want me to translate something, please do let me know. But I was asked for the whole segment of my segment of the seminar to be in English. Is that cool with you?
Yes.
Okay. I'll probably mention some points that Khadija and Adil have already mentioned in their brilliant presentations. I'll probably go over some points. But most importantly, maybe we should start with the Kuwaiti position of human rights, or word human rights in general. So we know that Kuwait signed a couple of very, very important covenants or treaties, which are the Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And I was told that you guys are aware of them, like most of you have either looked over them or studied them at some point, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, these covenants took effect around 1966, and Kuwait not only just signed, but also actually ratified the covenant. And do you guys know the difference? So when you sign a covenant or a treaty, you're in the process of looking it over and trying to maintain it and bring it to ground at your country. But if you ratify, then you are sorry? Yes, you are obliged to apply through legislation. So you have to start creating laws in your country as a government to start actually seeing direct result of these covenants on ground.
I'm unable to concentrate. Oh, yeah.
Too many through other things. So I brought the covenants with me, and I was thinking of going over them, but it's a bit boring, so I thought I'd ask you to do maybe that particular part of it. So what do you guys know about the rights stated in these two covenants? Are you aware of some of the rights mentioned there? The right to... Okay, well, the economic, social, and the cultural rights, and civil and political rights. So what comes to mind?
Freedom of speech.
Okay, freedom of speech, of expression. What else?
Equality.
Sorry?
Equality.
Equality, yes, equality, certainly. Yeah, so to not differentiate upon race or gender or all other blood trail and so on.
Healthcare and education.
Healthcare and education, and it goes at length in explaining those rights particularly. So education, for example, what do you know about education? We'll come to you in a minute.
That as Kuwaiti citizens, we have the right for education to, I think, end of high school.
As humans,
Yes,
actually, as humans, yeah. No, that's okay. You know, you speak from where you are, of course. But yeah, as humans in these covenants, because they're not created for certain countries, you are entitled to free education at elementary and secondary school, probably till high school, usually secondary means till high school, and then you have to have equal chances at higher education. And the country is responsible to pushing you, encouraging and not discouraging you from pursuing that further. You want to? Freedom of belief and opinion. And not just belief and opinion, it's freedom of actually promoting for your religion and promoting for your beliefs or none, that is, of course, it goes both ways. You mentioned also health. What about health? What kind of rights do we get under these covenants? For health? Well, accessible health?
Accessible,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, accessible health. Special health for special health services for children, for pregnant women, right? the availability of that health, that humans get that these health services without any, with complete dignified or within complete dignified situations and such. What else? Any other things that contribute?
Right to liberty.
Right to liberty and freedom of speech, and we spoke about that.
Right to movement.
Right to movement, that's very important, yes, certainly. So if you want to move around, unless it's under certain military situations, then you have the right to that. But it goes beyond this, it's the right of transportation as well. So if you want to move from country to country, you have the right to leave your country at any time, or the country of your residence at any time you want. Did you have your hand up? Right behind her, yeah? You, yeah? Did you have, okay, anyone else?
The
Yes.
right for security.
Right for security, and actually security services and insurance is mentioned by word, so you have to have the right to assert or secure yourself at older age or in case of, God forbid, any disabilities. Yes?
Right to employment and earning fair wages.
Right for employment, and not just employment, and it's mentioned as such, it's right for equal opportunity for employment. That also protects your dignity and the dignity of your family and provides for them under all circumstances. Yes. Did anyone else? You guys, I saw like 3-4 hands and they all disappeared.
Forming unions.
Right for forming unions, absolutely, and thus the right to assemble and the right for gathering and the right for demonstrations as long as they're peaceful. Anything else comes to mind?
Political participation.
The right for political participation, certainly, and this is a big chunk of these covenants also, the right to participate within the creation and legislation of a country. Yes?
Most important is shelter.
Right for, yeah, decent housing and decent services that protects your dignity as a human being. Sir, did you want to say something? Yes? You're just laughing at her, okay. Did you want to?
I was going to say shelter.
Okay. So these are, yes,
Dignified life.
dignified life, certainly. When you assert all of these rights, you are asserting dignified life. And there are more of kind of specific rights, like, for example, fair wages, rest and leisure time. These are also human rights, actually, for you. Adequate standard for living, highest level of physical and mental health services. We spoke about education. You have the right to take part in cultural life, so no one can stop you from actually participating culturally. A respect for speech and research, we spoke about that. The right to life, and this is where the penalty or the death penalty comes into question and becomes very problematic. The right to be protected against torture or inhumane treatment in prison or under any kind of legal circumstances. The right to not be pushed into any sort of labor. Right to be informed while you were arrested, a right for fast and prompt time, a reasonable time to be shown in front of a judge, or the right to be released. Juveniles have special rights and special treatments in that area. The right to recognition. Every person has the right to be recognized in front of the law, and this is where the issue of Bedoon becomes very problematic, because as of now we have a considerable number of people who are not recognized, meaning literally they are born, they live, and they die without documentation, so they never existed in life. And this is one huge issue that Kuwait faces. Freedom of thought, of conscience, of religion, right to opinion. This one is interesting, maybe a little bit away from our subject, but prohibition of propaganda for war. And we see that propaganda is taking off right now. The right to assembly and such other rights. Now, when we think about these rights that Kuwait not only signed but ratified, we can recognize, I don't know, even the average person who is not very involved in the issue of Bedoon might be able to recognize the problems and the shortcomings of these rights, and how that they're not really enjoyed equally and with dignity by that group of people called the Bedoon or stateless in Kuwait. Now, you've heard a little bit of history, which was a great presentation by Adil. I might want to add one or two points here just to take off the discussion. You have to realize that the situation in Kuwait is particularly unique because we all come from the same roots, us and Bedoon, and I don't know when it became us and Bedoon, but we actually all come from the same roots. So we're either of Saudi roots, of Iraqi roots, of Iranian roots, or of Syrian roots, actually. And the people at the time, before the creation of the modern state, mostly used to be nomads, right, moving between borders. And if you are lucky and you're in the right place at the right time, and the committees of naturalizing people have started work, then you would be to get naturalized and to receive documentation. Now, a lot of people did not receive documentation at that time for very strange reasons, and for sometimes even funny reasons. Like, for example, one of the reasons a lot of people, you find a lot of Bedoon today in Ahmedi, for example. The reason for that is that a large number of people, because there weren't Kuwaitis or non-Kuwaitis, that is, we're talking about the era before naturalization, so before the 1950s, right? A lot of people were living in Ahmedi, working at KOC, or it was called something else at that time. So they were working with the oil company at the time. When the Kuwaiti government started the committees to register people and give them nationality, they opened the main committees in downtown Kuwait. This was quite a trip for people in Ahmedi. So, sorry? Okay, so it was a long trip and they couldn't leave work. And so the government realized this, and like 2 months prior to the closure of all the committee work, they opened a couple of committees in Ahmedi. And so people who got news of this went to register, and others who didn't just did not register. Now others did not see any reason to apply for nationality because they thought, we're Kuwaiti. I'm not going to get a paper to prove that I'm Kuwaiti. I don't need that. It was that mentality at the time. And people functioned this way. My husband's uncle, I remember, told us a very funny story that when the government gave housing for him and his son, he returned one of the houses saying, my son lives with me, my son doesn't live in a separate house, that's just wrong. And we don't need you giving us housing, you know, we live in the same house. And they actually turned down the houses, right? So people used to think totally differently than the way we think of under civil countries and with civil rights. Other people were not naturalized just out of spite. So you would have people in the committee who hate other peoples or other families or other tribes, so they would not naturalize them. Or it actually happened, we have documented cases of this. Some men wanted to spite their wives. The wife would do something and angers the husband, so he wouldn't go register the baby. And so some children stayed Bedoon or stateless just because the father refused to go register the baby, just to spite the mom. These are some of the really interesting stories of why we have Bedoon today. Does this mean that we don't have people crossing the borders? Yes, we do. I mean, all countries have people crossing the borders. And the thing is, you can control this. We have small borders. And you can have a line drawn and say, you know, before this line, everyone is considered or is registered Bedoon, and you can deal with the case. If you register your name after this year, then we are not going to consider, you are not going to be considered Bedoon or within this category, but you're going to be considered illegal resident, which is what the Bedoon is called. The Kuwait is actually accusing itself by using this name. When you say it's an illegal resident, and yet you have a whole institution for them, and you're issuing cards or civil IDs and you're talking about rights and such that you are contradicting yourself and putting yourself in a very awkward position. Since then, though, because some people are registered and some are not, the Kuwaitis and the Bedoon lived side by side. So for my generation, for example, we all went to government schools and we didn't know who's Kuwaiti and who's Bedoon. It just never came up. Until 1986, something happened in particular in that year. Do you know, do you have any idea? Anyone? Was coincided with the suspension that came a little after. But in 1986 particularly, there was a secret document that was released by the government. I actually had a copy with it, but I'm not so cool as to have presentations, so I'm sorry. But this document asserted that the government is adopting new methods of figuring out the Bedoon, and that is by pressuring them. So, prevent them or prohibit chances for work, education, remove them from government schools, make health facilities kind of hard to be reached, pressure in every aspect of life, and the starting of a number of rumors and lies that as you continue to say them to the public, they will get scared. And this way, we will pressure those people to show their hidden papers and passports and what have you. Of course, this continued for, I don't know, 30-something years, and now we have 6 generations of Bedoon, and some of these Bedoon have not seen their ancestors who are allegedly crossed into Kuwait. So they don't, even if there were hidden papers, they don't have them anymore. They've been in the country for 50 years, and you have 6 generations of them. So our biggest problem, and maybe I better also refer to this, the public opinion turned against the case of Bedoon, basically because of the rumors that were circulated for a number of years, but also because Kuwaitis have had a very negative experience with naturalization or with giving nationality to people in the 80s. You remember? Or have you heard?
Yes.
I don't remember, of course. What happened is that at this time, because the government wanted to kind of equate the voting in the parliament at that time was actually semi-liberal, and the government was getting nervous, and so they brought in a lot of people from outside Kuwait and naturalized them, thinking they will vote pro-government. Of course, those people turned against now, and they come from different shades of people, so it's not targeting a certain shade of people. And so the Kuwaitis have this memory of very negative incident happening in the 80s, and so they're resisting of the issue of naturalization, as Khadija and Nadine mentioned, that the word to naturalize or give nationality, Kuwaitis usually are very afraid of it, although it's the #1 right for any humans. I mean, you cannot speak about human rights without the right to belong, to exist somewhere, to have roots. Very quickly, I mean, we talked about educational services. We have the educational funds that is spoken about. Today, there is total segregation. So Bedoon children go to private schools that are scary. I mean, you would not allow your cats and dogs to go to these schools. They're in very bad shape. Education is very weak in these schools, and they are occasionally asked to pay extra fees for these schools. So there is that kind of scary segregation for children. We don't mix with the Bedoon. They go to their own schools and we go to... So there is a creation of a ghetto now in Ahmadi, Salibia and Jahra. We are ghettoed in that way. Health services, Bedoon are only allowed in certain hospitals. And I remember talking about or dealing with an issue of pregnant women, because some pregnant women have to travel a distance to go to the hospital they're allowed in, and this has caused a number of serious problems of women needing to deliver, and they were not allowed into certain hospitals. Work, the government have issued, and I love and hate. I love it's an oxymoron. I love with hateful tears. How the government sometimes have those like big titles in the newspapers, you know, work forever. We've created a committee and opened the doors for Bedoon to go register. And you go and there is nothing. I mean, truly, there is nothing. It's just a great title, headline for the newspaper. So work opportunities are very scarce, and that's why you see children selling candy or perfumes in the street, and also selling fruit, watermelon. And for a while, the police, God help them, targeted those children because they are the reason for all corruption that we have in the country. So they would actually run after them, breaking the watermelons. I mean, they would catch the boys, break the watermelons. I don't know why. I mean, eat them. You know why would they crazy? Watermelons. And then they would take pictures and post them. Like very proudly, we have, you know, destroyed the evil watermelons. And so this has continued for a while. Today, we have been doing working at odd jobs, despite the fact that they might have very high degrees. And of course, they are not paid equal wages in no way. They are not entitled to same end of service sums of money. They don't even have the same kind of vacations and days off. So that has always been a big problem. Documentation, I want to talk about that very quickly. Again, Khadija and Nadine spoke about the forged passports and the fact that it created a level of people called Bedoon and Bedoon. And those are really like vague, a number of people who are just hanging. They're not quite Bedoon and they're not quite any other nationality. You know how this happens? Well, very briefly, all actually the committees which have dealt with the issue of Bedoon, من بعد الغزو, after the invasion, the government started creating committees, one after the other, to take care of the issue until the one we have now, the اسمه الجهاز المركزي. Do you know what its translation in English? The system. That's what they translate. That's truly how they. It's like Big Brother, you know, we're watching the system. And so the system have encouraged people, and before the system, actually the central committee was called the اللجنة المركزية. They had, شفتوا الإعلان اللي حطت لكم يا هدين? They had those ads up inside the building of the committee, and you can go in and look at the ad and actually call someone to buy a passport. So you buy a passport, but of course this passport will have an expiration date. So say it's good for 5 years. What are you going to do after? Say you buy, because it's the biggest issue now is with Syrian passports. So you go to the Syrian embassy and you say, my passport expired, what can I do? Would you please renew it? And they would say no, because it's forged. And so you go back to the system and you say, you know, I'm not Syrian anymore, what do I do? And they say, well, hands up, we have nothing to do with you. You are not Bedoon any longer. You are registered Syrian. And so they're hanging in there. They're not really on the ground and they're not in the sky. They're just hanging in the middle. And because of that, we had very weird situations with families. So you would have the same family with different nationalities, Syrian, Bolivian, I don't know what. And I have a friend who actually, he got يسمونه مؤشر جنسية. It's an indication to your nationality. He was indicated Iraqi. His brother studied in Bahrain, so he was indicated Bahraini, and they're brothers, pure brothers. And they had a third brother who had a bit of blonde hair, and so he's indicated Lebanese. I kid you not, those are 3 brothers in the same house. So. One point about marriage, because the Bedoon group are prevented legal documentation, and this is really sad to talk about. Those Bedoon who, for any number of reasons, do not have the green card, is the green card yeah, some kind of. It's interesting because this card is issued by the system, and they would issue it to you. So the system is an actual governmental institution. But on the back of the card, it says this card is not a legal document. Well, no one has figured out this dilemma yet. But people who do not have this card cannot get married, meaning you can't go to the court and sign a marriage contract. So what do you do if you want to get married? Well, what you do is you do the Sharia marriage, mullah, whatever your sect is, you get married. And then the husband and the father have to dispute the marriage in the court. So the husband would go to the court and say, my bride has committed adultery against me. يتهمها بالخيانة الزوجية.
ليش؟
عشان القاضي يضطر يزوجهم مثل زواج مخبر. So that they would have to document their marriages. So it's really sad situation. Now children of such marriages also do not receive legal documents. They receive what we call announcement or proclamation of birth, اللي هو بلاغ ولادة. And they have to go through a very humiliating DNA or proof of lineage to be able, and very costly by the way, to be able to prove these children, which they cannot do before 6 years old. The child has to be 6. So anytime before that, these children, and of course once you're 6, you need a couple of years to finish the process. So from 6 to 8, you have no documents, and so you cannot go to school. And that's why every year we have about 100 children who are unable to join elementary school. Every year, exact same problem. This year they've solved, and of course then you have to go and beg the minister and say please, 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 and you know, act all sweet to the people so that they would allow these children. This year we have 40-something children who are still hanging. Actually, they have the proclamation of birth or the notice of birth, but they are not allowed into schools. The one last point I want to mention here is the solution offered by the government. In a meeting with the system, we have sat with about 14 of their workers in the system, who are all military, by the way. They don't have anyone who specializes in anything. All of them are military. And they told us that the current solution that they are working on is to issue colored cards for the Bedoon. So if you are a Bedoon of the year 1965 and before, for example, and you're okay, you have not, I don't know, passed a red light or something, then you get a green card, a card of the color green. This means that you might, maybe, just sometimes in another life, I don't know, maybe you will have a chance at naturalization. And then you have a yellow card, which is maybe yes, maybe no, mostly no. And then you have a blue card, which God knows what, I don't know, I haven't memorized them. And then you have a red card. And red card is... Yeah, it's just no way in hell. So that red card expires in a year. And most of their cards actually expire in a year minus 3 months. So that would be 11. That would be on the literature, I don't know. 9 months. And that's because, and that's a very clever tactic, because then you can't use it in any. So you have it. So you have it only for 9 months, because then you will not be able to use it in any legal form. That's why it's usually a year minus 3 months. And so I said, okay, so people who receive the red card, what are you going to do with them after it expires? Say they pass a year and it expires. What are you going to do with them? I mean, they have no other countries. You can't send them anywhere else. And he said, it's not our problem. And I said, whose problem? He said, we refer them to the Ministry of interior affairs, and they deal with them. And I said, what do you think they're going to do with them? We don't know. So basically, we have no solution. What the government is offering are colored cards, which kind of reminds me of a fascist regime or something. So, I mean, this is kind of an overview of the situation. There are so many other details that can be mentioned. Maybe it will come up in your questions. And actually, I wanted to focus my presentation today on how do these violations affect social life, affect mental and physical health, affect life in general, not only for Bedoon but for Kuwaitis as well. How does this affect our society in general? Say we are very selfish people, and usually humans look for their benefits to begin with. So let's say we are looking for our own benefits to begin with, for what is beneficial for Kuwait. We are worried about chances of jobs. We are worried about seats at schools. We don't want to share them. We want them for ourselves. We are worried about the general financial situation. We are worried about the fabric of the country. You hear this word all the time, نسيج اجتماعي. It pisses me off. This particular word really pisses me off because I have no idea what that fabric is. No one has explained it to me as of yet. But then, what does? How do we deal with these deprivations, and how do these deprivations affect our society in all these above-mentioned points? But I think I've exceeded my time without the organization. So maybe if I stop here, and maybe if we have a conversation, that would be just a lot more fun than me talking. So thank you for listening, and